Okay, so welcome back, everybody. I think we're still sticking with it. We've finished the original iconic trilogy. And then, of course, because every horror movie needs to be remade in the last couple of years, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, The Thing, every movie from this period gets some bland modern remake, and this was no exception. And in 2013, they basically remade the first movie straight and just called it Evil Dead as opposed to The Evil Dead. And they made a huge production out of the fact that they brought Bruce Campbell and Sam Raimi on as producers and had them go everywhere advertising the film and just how much they were involved in it. But Bruce Campbell, of course, never appears on camera. And it's
not until the very end. Not until the very end does he appear.
Yeah, and that's just an after credits line read.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they had 7 producers on this movie, I think I counted. So I'm pretty sure that they just paid Sam Raimi and Bruce Campbell to come on board and advertise the thing. Because it, Sherry, did you see the remake?
I did see the remake. I watched that after watching the first 3. And so I was really able to kind of appreciate all the little nods that they gave to the original series. It
was definitely full of trivia from the first 3 movies. But
yes,
kind of how did it strike you as a movie?
It was just a very flat horror film with a lot of gore, and it was basically we're going to take the technologies and improved makeup skills that we have and apply it to this film. I don't know how much digital effects that they actually used in the remake. Some of the makeup was actually really good. And then some of it was just kind of like, okay, that's just a little, it wasn't, we talked about earlier, the thing with the eyes, it was very subtle makeup effects. I mean, when we're talking about the possessed people, they did, very kind of simple makeup to kind of transform them. Whereas in this one, it was just like every kind of extreme that we could go to, we were going to do from, full, one girl's cutting her face in half, and they redo the tree rape scene, except they make it even more extreme and more graphic, of course.
Which, again, I think we should just probably lead off with the fact that it's not a comedy.
No.
Everything
is taken serious.
And they also try and build up the backstories for the characters, where in the first one we didn't have that. It was like, who cares? I don't even know their names. I still don't know the names of the characters from the remake, other than the main girl. Her name was Mia, and the guy was David. Those are the only 2 names I can remember. And the one character that I wanted to survive, who I thought was halfway decent, was the girlfriend. I don't know what her name was, and she winds up chopping her arm off in homage to the original series. Where her hand gets infected, and so she just, I don't know how the hell she does this. We've talked about this, but she manages to cut her arm off with one of those electric
carving knives.
Carving knives. You can't cut through bone with that. Are you kidding me?
It's like Uncle Mel carves the Thanksgiving turkey with this thing, and she's lopping arms off.
She's lopping it. It's just like, how hard and dense the human bone is. You're not getting through. I think I scared Mike when I said that originally, was how quickly I said, you can't cut through human bone with that. And I think that's just from
he was very matter of fact about it. Like, oh, come on.
Another scene that got me was when they used the nail gun. That was really wincing to watch as well.
That was wincing but cool, because it's true. That actually does happen. And those nail guns are that powerful. If you go online, you can probably find the X-ray images of doofuses who have managed to nail their heads with one of those, and it does go through bone and skull very easily. God. Yes, and they get these 4-inch nails lodged in their forehead, like, ooh, how that happened?
And there are these brutal, straight up scenes that seem like they belong in an Eli Roth movie more than in an Evil Dead movie, where the possessed characters has the unpossessed character best backed up into a corner, and she's just firing nail after nail after nail into him. Once he can't raise his arm to defend himself anymore, the nails are going into his stomach and into his head, and it's brutal as far as like a well shot, freak you out, body horror scene. It's brutal, but.
It was definitely one of those movies where it's like, for the unpossessed people, it's like they should be dead right now. This is not physically possible to keep going. I know the adrenaline can do as much, you can do quite a bit to keep a person going, but I think at this point you're done. You should be done.
I guess before, we'll get back to the plotting and why the characters are the way they are, because Sherry, you touched on that. But Mac, do you have any info on the background of why they went to this much extent to try to brand this movie as an Evil Dead movie and give it so many Evil Dead reference points, and yet make it such a completely different movie in tone, where it's this straight up kind of teen possession slasher flick that's played not for laughs at all, that doesn't have any weird camera-ness at all. It just has kind of brutal gore and this kind of tense pace of like 10 little Indians, you're dead, you're dead, you're dead, last survivor versus the demon kind of structure. Mac, do you have any insight into how this came to be?
I mean, it's weird because I had an opportunity when I was an undergrad where I actually interviewed Bruce Campbell, which was just
dude.
Yeah,
dude,
you're just telling us this now?
And it was over the internet, so it wasn't a person-to-person interview though, but it was over the internet, and I actually
doesn't matter.
Yeah. I brought it up to him saying, like, are there ever any concerns that Evil Dead is going to be remade after all these other horror remakes? He says, it's not going to happen. I don't see it ever happening. And then, of course, here he is now on the promotional circuit talking about Evil Dead, the remake. And it's like, really? You gave in? But
money.
Yeah. And plus, if it gave them the opportunity to do what they're doing now with Ash versus Evil Dead, or try to make another Evil Dead movie, then I guess I'm all for it. Ends justify the means.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as this movie goes, I think this was just trying to... remakes were the big thing at this time. In fact, I know they're still happening now, but I don't know what it was, but the 2010s and 2010, 2011, those were like when you really started getting the remakes of Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, the really big horror movies. And so, I mean, people see Evil Dead as being equal to those films. So I guess they thought, we've already remade the bigger ones. Let's go ahead and remake another big one. And then they decided with Evil Dead.
Right. And what interested me the most is that, again, they made it just this generic, brutal teen, body horror slasher flick. But they were obsessed with cramming in as many superficial references to the Evil Dead movies as possible. They had this, it was this very weird combination where it didn't feel like an Evil Dead movie. It wasn't shot like an Evil Dead movie. The characters were just random teens, although I guess the hook for this one was that one of the random teens, she was a drug addict. So that was a metaphor for possession. Yeah.
Yeah. The story of her was basically they took her to this cabin so they could get her clean and use cold turkey to get her off of her drug habit, which still...
That's a stupid idea.
Yeah, when you're trying to bring something as real as drug addiction to something as over-the-top fantastic as Evil Dead, that kind of ruins the sheen of it. Like, Evil Dead's not supposed to have any kind of basis in reality. That's why these movies, I think, have had their longevity, is because they are so hyper-realistic, and then to try and make it realistic, it doesn't work. It's like having Mo gouge Larry in the eyes, but instead of it just being a boink, you see Larry's eyes on his fingers. It doesn't work.
Yes.
Which but it's just strange. I just kind of want to get into the minds of people who make these remakes, because it reminded me very much. I'm a huge fan of John Carpenter's The Thing. It might just be overall
it's a great movie.
Right. So when I saw the remake of The Thing, it was the same kind of thing where it's got these generic disposable characters. It doesn't have kind of any of the quirky humanity of Kurt Russell's character, who's this drunk who blows up chess computers and wears a dorky hat and does all this. So they're just generic, good-looking television actor scientist characters, and they get attacked by a monster. But it had the same thing that the Evil Dead remake in 2013 did, where it was obsessed with popping in as much trivia and reverential references to the first movie as possible. So I made a list, and I gave up because it took up more than a week. I just had a checklist of the things repeated from Evil Dead movies. They had the book, the shotgun, same cabin. One of the characters was a sketch artist. They had a necklace with a mirror on it. Some characters sang another character a lullaby. There was a clock that ticked. They had a basement door. They had the point of view monster. They had the beat for beat, the attempted escape on the bridge that was washed out. They had tree rape. Of course, you have to put in the tree rape. They had a character drink boiling water just to have a character drink boiling water, like in Evil Dead 3.
Did she drink it or did she just stand in it? I thought she just
the
stood
shower
in the
scene.
boiling water.
I think it was the
The
shower.
shower
Yeah,
scene.
the boiling hot shower
She
scene. Yeah.
stands in it, but then if you remember, it's really clunky because then the character who's the dork who's reading the Necronomicon and says the stuff out loud and causes the whole problem. He's
They
reading,
show it, yeah.
yeah, and there's like a medieval ye old diagrammy of a possessed person guzzling a pot of boiling water the same way Bruce Campbell had for laughs in Evil Dead 3. So it's like
Right.
they're just like clunking ahead to make sure they get in the exact reference. And the whole thing's like that. Then there's a crowbar and a mirror and blah, 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 blah. And they bother, and there's a workshop and someone makes something in a workshop. But at the same time, it's just this very weird combination that I can't wrap my head around where they're trying to be so authentic by putting in so many superficial references. But then they make something that's completely different and completely generic and completely forgettable. And
It's the old tactic of just using familiar imagery to try and rope in the cynical people who know that this is going to be nothing like the original film. It's not going to be as good as the original. So they decide, hey, let's throw all these things in here, and maybe that'll bring us the extra money from the fans who say they aren't going to see this movie, and then we have something that we can try and draw them in with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
it's like the worst parts of a conversation on the internet. Eventually, everyone is just referencing something.
Yeah.
Not actually saying anything, not actually saying anything new, just referencing as many things as they can.
It's like what you see on Family Guy now. It's like, hey, this is like that time so-and-so did this. And
Yeah, it is. It's just all references.
That's
I'm like,
not
oh.
a joke. It's a reference.
Yeah,
Mhm.
which I think is the best summation of the new Evil Dead movie. It's not a joke, it's just a reference.
Mm-hmm.
Giant reference. Nothing new.
Oh, I think that's kind of all I have to say about that. Oh, and they bothered to bring in the girl from The Ring, which, what?
They didn't bring in the girl from The Ring. That was her doppelganger.
It was the girl from The Ring. It was like a guest appearance.
When?
No, he's thinking of, the rape scene, the tree rape scene when she
Oh.
comes up out of the mud. She looks like the girl
gotcha.
from The Ring. It's really Mia's doppelganger in demon form.
Right, it's like her evil Ash, I guess, but she doesn't say anything, and she's a black-haired girl with the hair falling over her face, emerging wet and attacking you. So it's like,
It's pretty much the same idea.
it's like, oh shit, this is the same woods where they had that well. Now it all makes sense.
Ah,
Mm-hmm. There's your fanfic.
Yep.
there we go. Oh, crossover fanfic. Who's gonna write it?
Yep. Oh crap, there's a xenomorph in the basement.
Ah,
Nah, I see Ash more as a fighting a predator. That would be a more interesting fight.
how hysterical would that be?
And for the longest time, I was actually convincing people that they need to make an Ash versus Leatherface movie, just so you can have dueling chainsaws.
Chainsaws against
Oh.
chainsaws.
Why hasn't that happened?
Leatherface would win, unfortunately. I do think Leatherface would win.
Ash versus Dennis Hopper.
No, Ash teaming up with Dennis Hopper against the Slayer family.
Yes. Yes.